sehr geehrte Damen und Herren.
Ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies, it's a great pleasure for me to be able to greet you here in the Weltsaal of the Federal Foreign Office. It's a pleasure for me to contribute to this conference. All of us are united by the same ideas. Of course, we all have our own interests, our own needs, but we have a shared goal. We want to combat climate change and its consequences, and we all want to prepare for a climate-neutral energy system. For this to happen, global cooperation needs to offer what is needed. And we also need to do this in Germany, in line with the needs and requirements of other countries. And this is particularly a task for the ministry I represent, the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. We have many different partners in the world, and we want to face up to this responsibility. For us in Germany, it is clear why this is important. We depend on other countries' commodities, on energy from other countries, on well-functioning supply chains, and also on global markets, sales markets. This is why we need partnerships. And in a global situation such as the one we find ourselves in, this is not something that goes without saying, because we require trust for this to work. This partnership has to do with attitude, with our attitude towards economic cooperation and international cooperation. So what's our understanding from partnership? And one thing is very clear to us in the federal government, and for me personally, and as a representative of the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. This is not about telling other countries what they need to do and how they need to solve their problems. This is about seeking and finding solutions together at the local level, and to also meet demand, for instance, for renewables and so forth. And we need to reconcile this with the offers we are able to make from our point of view. So our supply needs to be aligned with the demand that exists in different countries. And for this to happen, we need to have a very frank and honest conversation about our shared and different interests. Our shared interests include, as I said earlier, combating climate change. And we all know that there is no alternative. There are many things we can discuss, but we don't have a second planet. And so it's necessary to respond to climate change, to make the transition away from fossil fuels to renewables. And I'm convinced that the energy transition will only succeed if we work with communities and with countries, with people. And this means social equity and justice. So this means that development needs and development possibilities and prospects need to be borne in mind in this process in the different regions of the world. And we also need to factor in that there's a growing demand for energy in many areas. So the energy transition must not result in major social upheaval, which is already happening in many countries and areas. On the contrary, the transition, the necessary transition, needs to be used to actually use new technologies, renewables, to overcome this social injustice. We, for the first time at COP28, for the first time, we agreed to speed up this process. We committed to tripling the renewables capacity and to doubling energy efficiency. And this is especially important, the community of states has decided and agreed to phase out fossil fuels. And this sets a very clear task for German development policy. Our focus is on sustainability, on the transition of energy systems to renewables all across the world. We are convinced that solar, wind and hydrogen are the energies of the future. They can be used in a distributed way, and this is particularly important in the context of economic development. They can be used to build local and regional value chains and make many people independent of potential large investments in their surroundings. Also, renewables are becoming more and more economically viable and sensible. And this is why even large companies are now more and more willing to invest in renewables if the regulatory framework is right. Just to give you two examples from the field of green hydrogen. So when we talk about green hydrogen, we're not only discussing about producing hydrogen and exporting it. We also need to discuss how we can do this in an economically viable, ecologically sensible way. And this needs to be done in the countries where this hydrogen is produced. It should improve livelihoods for people over there. So it's not only a matter of exports, hydrogen also needs to be used to improve the energy situation in the countries where it is produced. Local value chains need to be strengthened. If we bear this in mind, and if we focus on sustainability and sustainable industry, we know that this will generate new value chains in many different areas, including green steel, fertilizers, and power plants. So we have manifold opportunities for protecting the environment and also creating jobs and economic growth. And this is something that will also help us in the debate around the SDGs. So our goal is to make good progress. If you look at SDG 8 or SDG 10 about reducing global inequality. So there are projects such as the green hydrogen projects that need to be in the best interest of everyone involved. And of course, the details depend on the situation in the respective country, but we really need to make progress towards development. Of course, we also need to look at how we can stop the rise in energy prices, how we manage scarce water resources, how we can help poorer communities to participate. The commodity of land is an issue, and everyone needs to be involved in building infrastructure. So this is about planning water infrastructure and also desalination plants. We at the ministry and in the German government do know this, we have an interest in this, and of course we need hydrogen as well for our own goals. But we must not only focus on our own needs, we also need to look at it both ways, and we need to create positive situations for both sides. Let me give you two examples. The first is the German-Moroccan Hydrogen Alliance, which reconciles the different interests. The focus is on a large 100 gigawatts production plant in Morocco. It will open in late 2026 and be the first of its kind on the African continent. There will also be a research platform, and the market ramp-up will also be planned and prepared. Later on, joint sales markets are to be opened up. And this, of course, caters to the European and German interests as well. Then there are other examples, let me say Latin America, for instance. And this is what my second example is about. It's a project that is being conducted with German business, the Hydrogen Brazil project, and these investments will create the first hydrogen plant in South America. This will give rise to new value chains and jobs in South America. I chose those two examples because they show how you can work on issues together and generate positive solutions for everyone involved. So building a green hydrogen industry needs to help the local communities. It needs to deliver clean energy, jobs, value chains, local value chains. And it also, on the other hand, helps countries such as Germany who rely on these energies. So this might be the most important point I'd like to make. When we discuss the energy transition, climate action, and the social and economic transition, we need to be honest and frank with one another. And this needs to happen on the basis of trust and partnership. I am very pleased to see that you all have made your way here and that you are all willing to engage in this dialogue of partnership. This is the only way to combat climate change and to promote a just and equitable energy transition. Thank you.